A nurse was drugged and forced to marry a stranger billionaire. But what happened next surprised everyone. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's continue the story. It began on a stormy afternoon in New York City. Thunder rolled across the skyline, and rain streaked down the tall windows of the Ellington estate like tears on glass. Inside, the air smelled of white roses and expensive perfume. Guests whispered beneath the crystal chandeliers, unaware that the bride standing at the altar was fighting to stay conscious. Emilia Cortez blinked hard, trying to focus as the world around her blurred at the edges. Her head felt heavy, her limbs weak, her pulse too slow. The piano played softly, but every note stabbed through her dizziness like a knife. "Sign it," a cold male voice commanded beside her. A pen was pressed into her trembling hand, its silver barrel glinting under the lights. "If you do not, your sister's clinic will close tomorrow morning. You would not want that on your conscience, would you?" The words slithered through her fogged mind, and before she could understand, her fingers moved on their own. Her name, Emilia Cortez, appeared on the marriage certificate. Cameras flashed. Applause followed. She stood frozen as a ring slid onto her finger. She was now Mrs. Garrick Ellington, wife to a billionaire she had never met. Hours earlier, Emilia had been finishing her night shift at St. Mary's Hospital. The emergency room smelled of antiseptic and exhaustion. Her scrubs were damp with sweat, her hands sore from 12 hours of work. When her phone rang, she almost ignored it. The number was unknown. "Miss Cortez," the voice said smoothly, "I represent the Ellington Foundation. We are considering sponsoring your sister's clinic. Can you meet us tonight at the Crescent Hotel? It is urgent." She had hesitated just long enough to think of her sister's medical bills, then grabbed her coat and left. At the hotel, everything felt slightly off. The man waiting for her wore a gray suit and a polite smile. "Coffee?" he asked, already pouring it for her. She had taken a sip, warm and bitter. Minutes later, the floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Darkness crawled in from the corners of her vision. The last thing she remembered was the man's voice saying, "You will thank us later." Now, standing in a white wedding gown that was not hers, Emilia's mind fought to piece the fragments together. Across from her stood Garrick Ellington, tall, composed, and impossibly cold. His dark eyes gave nothing away. "Smile for the press," he murmured. "It is your wedding day after all." She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her throat burned dry. Flashbulbs burst again, sealing her nightmare into the public eye. When the ceremony ended, Garrick guided her into a waiting limousine. The city lights slid past in golden streaks through the tinted glass. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He looked straight ahead. "Because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time," he said quietly. "And now you belong to me." Outside, thunder cracked once more over Manhattan, drowning out the sound of her quiet sob. Let's go back to our main character, Emilia Cortez, and find out how this forced marriage would soon turn into something no one, least of all her, ever expected. The limousine rolled through the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan, its tinted windows reflecting streaks of gold and gray. Emilia Cortez sat silently, her hands clasped together in her lap, still trembling from the shock. The wedding ring on her finger felt like a shackle made of ice. Across from her, Garrick Ellington scrolled through his phone with detached precision, his face unreadable. The man she had just married might as well have been carved from marble. Emilia's throat tightened as the car climbed the long driveway to a private estate that seemed to stretch endlessly into the mist. When the door opened, cold wind and the scent of salt from the Atlantic rushed in. Garrick stepped out first and spoke without looking back. "Welcome home, Mrs. Ellington." Inside, the mansion was silent except for the soft hum of electricity and the rhythmic click of Emilia's heels on the marble floor. A housekeeper appeared briefly, bowed slightly, and vanished through another hallway. No congratulations, no smiles, only stillness. Garrick led her into a study with dark wood shelves and floor-to-ceiling windows. A single folder lay open on the desk, a document filled with numbered clauses. He turned to her, voice low and measured. "This is your contract. 6 months. You will live here, attend events when required, and maintain the image of a devoted wife. In return, your sister's clinic will remain funded. You will have no say in company matters and no access to private accounts. Violate any term, and the deal ends immediately. Emilia's hands clenched. A deal? You drugged me, forced me to sign a marriage certificate, and you call it a deal? Garrick met her eyes for the first time. His stare was calm, almost too calm. You are alive, your family is safe, and that is what matters. Do not mistake this arrangement for affection. His words landed like cold rain on an open wound. He turned away, dismissing her with a flicker of his hand. Your room is at the end of the hall. Dinner is at 7. Try to be on time. That night, Emilia sat alone on the edge of a bed too large for one person. The sheets smelled faintly of lavender and ocean air. She looked around the room, designer furniture, soft lighting, a vanity filled with perfumes she would never wear. Everything screamed luxury, yet she had never felt poorer in her life. Her phone was gone, her clothes replaced by elegant dresses with tags still attached. When she opened the balcony doors, the wind whipped through her hair, carrying the roar of the sea. Somewhere below, waves crashed against the cliffs, relentless and free everything she was not. She thought of her sister Lila back in the small town of Providence, struggling to keep the free clinic running. If Garrick was telling the truth, the funding would arrive tomorrow. That meant the children could keep their treatment, the nurses could stay employed. Maybe that was the only thing keeping Emilia from falling apart. She whispered into the wind. It was worth it, wasn't it? The next morning, sunlight cut through the gray, flooding the mansion's glass corridors. Emilia found herself seated at a long breakfast table, an untouched plate of eggs in front of her. Garrick sat at the other end, dressed in a dark suit, reading the morning paper as if nothing unusual had happened. We have an appearance tonight, he said without looking up. The Ellington Foundation's annual gala. You will be introduced as my wife. Try not to say too much. Emilia forced a thin smile. Do I get to choose my own words, or are those in the contract too? For the first time, his jaw tightened. You are quick with sarcasm. That will not serve you well here. Loco. Hours later, as she stood before the mirror in a gown she had not chosen, she saw a stranger staring back at her. Her eyes still held the fire of the nurse who had once comforted patients through pain and fear. But now that fire burned quietly behind silk and diamonds. Downstairs, Garrick waited, his hand outstretched. Ready? He asked. Emilia hesitated, then slipped her hand into his. It was warm, steady, and surprisingly human. For the briefest moment, something flickered behind his calm exterior, something she could not name. Outside, the limousine door closed with a muted thud, sealing them once again in that strange silence. The city lights rose ahead, glittering like 1,000 secrets waiting to be uncovered. Emilia stared out the window, her reflection ghosted against the skyline. She had no idea that this night, this performance of a perfect marriage, would be the first crack in Garrick Ellington's carefully built armor, and the first step toward discovering why she had truly been chosen. The Ellington Foundation's annual gala unfolded beneath a canopy of crystal lights and champagne laughter. Cameras flashed, and the scent of roses filled the grand ballroom. Emilia Cortez stood at Garrick's side, her silver gown glimmering under the chandeliers. Every smile she gave was rehearsed, every glance carefully measured. On the outside, she looked like a woman living a dream. On the inside, she felt like a ghost trapped behind glass. Garrick's hand rested lightly on the small of her back, a gesture that to the crowd looked tender but to her felt calculated. Another move in a game she had not agreed to play. Reporters swarmed, microphones flashing like weapons. Mr. Ellington, your wife is stunning, one said. Garrick gave a polite nod. I am fortunate, he replied, his tone distant, practiced. Emilia lowered her gaze, her heart pounding. As they moved through the crowd, Garrick leaned in slightly. Remember, he murmured, say very little. She nodded, but her attention was caught by the charity display near the center of the room, a photo exhibit of children treated through the Ellington Medical Fund. One of the photos stopped her cold. A little boy with a bandaged arm, smiling despite his pain. The caption read, Providence Children's Clinic. That was her sister's clinic. Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. Garrick noticed. Something wrong? He asked quietly. That clinic, she said softly. It is my sister's. His expression flickered for just a moment's surprise, maybe, or guilt, then returned to its usual calm. Then it seems the partnership is already paying off. Dundo. Later that evening, while Garrick discussed business with investors, Emilia slipped onto the terrace, seeking air. The city glowed beneath her like a field of fallen stars. She closed her eyes, breathing in the night, when a voice cut through the quiet. Mrs. Ellington, is it? She turned to see a man in a tailored gray suit, holding a glass of wine and a cruel smile. "Dr. Latham," he said, offering a hand she did not take. "I used to work with your husband. I must say, he has quite the taste for charity cases these days." Emilia's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" Latham chuckled. "Do not take offense. I just mean, a nurse from Providence marrying Garrick Ellington, it is quite the leap, is it not?" Something inside her snapped. "Maybe he wanted someone who remembers what compassion looks like," she said evenly. "You should try it sometime." Latham's smirk faltered as Garrick appeared behind her, his voice cool as steel. "Doctor Latham, I did not realize you were still in the city. Security will show you out." The man stammered something and retreated. Emilia exhaled slowly, realizing her hands were shaking. Garrick glanced at her. "You handled yourself well," he said. "You did not need to step in," she replied. "He insulted my wife," Garrick said simply. "That is my responsibility." The drive home was quiet except for the sound of rain against the windows. Garrick stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. Emilia watched his reflection in the dark glass. For the first time, she saw something other than control fatigue, maybe even loneliness. "Why do you hate him so much?" she asked softly. Garrick's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Because he cost me something I cannot get back," he said, "and because I trusted him." He did not elaborate. When they returned to the mansion, Emilia hesitated at the grand staircase. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for standing up for me." Garrick turned to her, eyes shadowed. "Do not mistake decency for affection, Emilia. I did what was necessary." His voice was sharp, but it lacked conviction. He left her there, standing alone in the dim light of the hallway. Later that night, she could not sleep. The rain had stopped, and the ocean outside murmured softly against the cliffs. She wandered into the study and found the same folder that had been on Garrick's desk, the contract. Her name, his signature, the clause about 6 months. But there was something else tucked inside. A newspaper clipping dated 1 year earlier. Ellington Pharmaceuticals under investigation, insider sabotage suspected. The article mentioned one name she recognized: Dr. Latham. Emilia's breath caught. It was not random. None of it was. Upstairs, a light turned on in Garrick's office. He stood by the window, staring out into the darkness, unaware that the woman he had forced into marriage had just found the first thread of the truth behind his empire. And for the first time since the night she woke up in a stranger's wedding gown, Emilia felt something different from fear. She felt curiosity and a spark of determination that would soon change everything. The following morning, sunlight spilled across the Ellington mansion, cutting through the mist that hovered above the ocean. Emilia Cortez stood by the tall window of her bedroom, holding the newspaper clipping she had found inside Garrick's desk. The headline replayed in her mind again and again: "Insider sabotage suspected." Dr. Latham's name was right there in bold print. The same man who had insulted her at the gala, the same man Garrick had thrown out without hesitation. The puzzle pieces began to fit, but the picture they formed was far from complete. Why had Garrick forced her into marriage? What did she have to do with his war against Latham? She folded the clipping carefully and slipped it into her nightstand drawer. Downstairs, she could hear Garrick's voice through the half-open study door, low and clipped as he spoke on the phone. "The board will not hear about this until I have proof," he said. "If Latham is moving funds again, we trace every account." Quietly, he paused, then added, "And make sure my wife does not get dragged into this." The last words made Emilia's pulse quicken. She was not supposed to hear that, but she could not ignore it either. When he ended the call, she stepped into the doorway. "You do not have to protect me, Garrick," she said softly. He turned, his expression hardening. "You should not eavesdrop. You should not have secrets," she replied. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the silence between them felt heavier than the ocean outside. Garrick finally sighed. "You would not understand." "Then make me understand," she said, her voice steady. He looked at her for a long moment before turning away. "The less you know, the safer you are." That afternoon, the air in the mansion shifted. The housekeeper delivered an envelope addressed to Mrs. Emilia Ellington. Inside was an invitation, the Board of Trustees dinner at the Ellington Biopharma headquarters. She glanced at Garrick's initials embossed in gold. It was not just a dinner, it was a stage, one where image meant everything. When she showed it to Garrick, he frowned. "You do not have to attend, but the invitation is for me," she said quietly. "And if I am to play your wife, I might as well play it well." His jaw tightened, but he did not stop her. That evening, the city glittered under the rain as their limousine pulled up to the tower that bore Garrick's name, Inside the glass atrium, executives in designer suits mingled with politicians and investors. Garrick was greeted with reverence, but when Emilia stepped out beside him, the whispers began. She ignored them and stood tall, her silver earrings catching the light. During dinner, one of the board members raised a glass. "To the Ellington legacy," he declared, "and to the lovely Mrs. Ellington, who has brought new grace to the company." Applause followed, polite but sharp-edged. Emilia smiled, but she could feel the tension radiating from Garrick beside her. Midway through the event, a server stumbled, spilling wine across the tablecloth. Emilia moved instinctively, helping the man steady his tray. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. The young waiter nodded, mortified. The board members murmured disapproval, but Garrick's expression softened. "Thank you," he whispered to her as the music resumed. It was the first genuine warmth she had seen in his eyes. Later, as the crowd thinned, Garrick guided her to a quieter corner. "You surprised them tonight," he said. "You surprised me." She met his gaze. "You underestimate me." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I do not trust easily. When I took over this company, I lost more than money. I lost people I thought were loyal. Latham was one of them." Emilia studied his face, seeing the flicker of pain beneath his calm. "So this marriage," she said, "is part of your plan to rebuild trust or to hide something?" His eyes darkened. "It was supposed to protect both of us." "From what?" she pressed. "From becoming collateral damage," he said, and walked away before she could ask more. That night, as rain returned to the cliffs, Emilia sat by her window and stared at the reflection of lightning on the sea. For the first time, she sensed that Garrick's coldness was not cruelty, it was armor. But armor cracks eventually. And as she looked down at the contract that bound them together, she realized something had already begun to change. The lines on that paper no longer felt like chains. They felt like the beginning of something neither of them had planned. Days turned into weeks inside the Ellington mansion, and the strange rhythm of their lives began to settle like the steady tide outside the windows. Emilia Cortez still woke early each morning out of habit, long before the house stirred. She would brew coffee in the quiet kitchen, the aroma filling the marble halls that always felt too big, too perfect, too cold. One morning she noticed a second cup placed beside hers, already poured. Garrick stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, watching her. "You take it black," he said simply. It was not a question. Emilia hesitated, then nodded. "You remembered." He gave a small shrug. "I remember everything that matters." It was the closest thing to kindness he had ever said, and somehow it lingered long after he left the room. That same day, Garrick invited her to accompany him to the hospital wing that the Ellington Foundation funded. "It is part of the public image," he said as they entered the sleek building, "but also a reminder of why we do what we do." The scent of disinfectant and coffee reminded her of her old life as a nurse. As they walked through the corridors, children waved from their beds, and Emilia's instinct returned adjusting pillows, offering smiles, asking gentle questions. Garrick watched her silently. For once, he did not look like a man of business, but someone remembering what humanity felt like. One young boy grabbed Emilia's hand and whispered, "Thank you, Mrs. Ellington." Her throat tightened as Garrick looked away. That evening, when they returned to the mansion, the atmosphere felt different. Dinner was quiet but not tense. Garrick asked about her work at the hospital before their marriage, about her sister, about the patients she had lost. His questions were sincere, his voice softer. She found herself laughing once when he admitted he could not cook even an omelet. "So the billionaire has limits after all," she teased. He smirked slightly. "Plenty, but I hide them well." It was the first time they shared something that was not strategy or obligation. It was almost normal. But peace never lasted long in Garrick Ellington's world. The next afternoon, as Emilia walked past his study, she heard a crash. A glass shattered against the wall. Garrick was on the phone, his voice harsh and strained. "If that report leaks, everything collapses. I do not care what it costs, shut it down." He noticed her standing there, his face pale. "It is nothing," he said quickly. "Company matters." She stepped closer. "You are lying." "What are you hiding from me?" He exhaled sharply, setting the phone down. "You should not have to carry this," he said, and then, almost whispering, "They are coming after the foundation, after everything connected to me." That night, Emilia could not sleep. She returned to the study hours later, the rain tapping softly against the windows. The folder that once held their marriage contract was gone. In its place lay a series of bank reports and coded transfers. One signature appeared more than once, Dr. Latham. Her pulse quickened as she realized the money had been moving through a charity account under her own name. It was a setup. Someone wanted to make it look like she was laundering funds from Garrick's foundation. Her stomach twisted as she understood the trap. When Garrick entered the room moments later, she turned to him, eyes blazing. "You knew," she said. "That is why you married me. To control the damage." He froze, guilt flashing across his face. "I was trying to protect you," he said quietly. "They were already using your name before I ever met you. I thought if you were under my legal protection they could not touch you." Emilia stared at him, breathless. "You could have told me. Would you have believed me?" he asked, voice breaking. The silence that followed said everything. She walked past him, her hands shaking. "You took away my choice, Garrick. You drugged me and called it protection. That is not love. That is control." He reached for her arm but stopped before touching her. "You are right," he said, "and I hate myself for it." His voice cracked like glass, and for the first time she saw the man beneath the armor, terrified, regretful, human. Emilia turned toward the window, the storm outside growing louder. "Then prove it," she said quietly. "Prove you are not the monster they say you are." He looked at her, something fierce and desperate in his eyes. "I will," he said. "I will clear your name and end this, no matter what it costs me." As thunder rolled across the ocean, Emilia realized that everything had changed. The contract that once bound them together had turned into a fragile alliance, forged in truth and guilt, and somewhere beneath the anger and betrayal, she felt something dangerous stirring a hope she did not want to name. The storm that had raged through the night left the morning air heavy with salt and silence. Emilia Cortez stood on the balcony, watching the waves break against the cliffs below. The sky was a pale gray, the color of uncertainty. Somewhere inside the mansion, she could hear Garrick's voice, low and urgent, speaking to his legal team. The words blurred together, but she caught fragments: Latham, forged transfers, evidence. Her name was mixed among them like a wound reopened again and again. When he finally ended the call, he appeared in the doorway behind her. His tie was loosened, his expression drawn. "They are launching an internal audit," he said quietly. "Every account, every transaction, including yours. I can stop the press for now, but not for long." Emilia turned to face him. "Then we prove it," she said. "We find the trail before they destroy both of us." Garrick studied her for a long moment. "You would help me after everything I have done to you?" She met his eyes steadily. "I am not helping you, Garrick. I am protecting the truth." For the next few days, the mansion became a war room. Papers covered every surface of the study. The air smelled of coffee, ink, and tension. Garrick worked tirelessly, his focus razor-sharp, but Emilia noticed the exhaustion behind his eyes. She sat beside him, sorting files, tracing transfers, connecting patterns only a nurse's eye for detail could catch. "This signature," she said one evening, tapping a document. "It changes slightly each time someone is forging your authorizations." Garrick leaned closer, surprise flickering across his face. "How did you see that?" "Because I spent years reading doctor signatures," she said softly. "And fakes always tremble on the second stroke." Their eyes met, and for the first time, a quiet partnership settled between them. That night, as they worked under the golden light of the desk lamp, the walls that had once separated them began to crumble. At one point, Emilia rubbed her temples, exhaustion clouding her mind. Garrick pushed a cup of coffee toward her. "It is not drugged," he said with a faint smile. She gave him a look that was half disbelief, half amusement. "Good, because if it were, I would throw it at you." He chuckled softly, a sound she had never heard from him before. For a fleeting moment, the mansion did not feel like a prison. It felt almost alive. The next morning, a breakthrough came. Emilia discovered an encrypted file buried inside the Foundation's online records. The transfers led to an offshore account under a name that sent a chill down Garrick's spine: Nathan Latham Holdings. It was proof. But before they could act, the power flickered and the system went dark. A text message appeared on Garrick's phone. "Stop digging or she disappears next." The air froze between them. Emilia read the message over his shoulder. "He knows," she whispered. Garrick's jaw tightened. "You are not leaving my sight until this is over." "You cannot keep me locked up again," she said sharply. "That did not protect me last time." "It is not about control," he said. "It is about keeping you alive." That evening, Garrick called in a private investigator, a grizzled man named Howard Reeves who had once worked federal cases. As Reeves examined the files, he nodded. Your saboteur is moving through a charity front in Miami. If we catch one more transfer, we can trace it directly to Latham. Garrick turned to Emilia. We will finish this, he said, together. More. Later that night, as the house fell into uneasy silence, Emilia found Garrick on the balcony, his shoulders tense against the sea wind. You never told me why you really started this foundation, she said quietly. He hesitated, then spoke. It was my mother's idea before she passed. She believed medicine should heal, not profit. Latham thought otherwise. When she died, he tried to take everything. I built this place to prove her right. His voice wavered for the first time. Emilia stepped closer, her tone gentle. She would be proud of you, Garrick. But you cannot save her memory by destroying yourself. He looked at her then, the cold mask gone. You think I am destroying myself? I think you are finally learning to feel again, she said softly. For a moment neither spoke. The wind carried the faint sound of waves and something fragile between them, a connection they could not deny. Garrick's voice dropped to a whisper. I do not deserve your forgiveness. Emilia's answer came quietly but firm. Then earn it. As lightning flashed over the ocean, Garrick reached for her hand, not as a contract, not as control, but as a promise. The storm outside raged on, but inside that quiet moment, the first real calm had begun to form. They both knew what came next would be dangerous, but for the first time they would face it not as strangers bound by lies, but as two people fighting for the same truth. By the next morning, the mansion was no longer a sanctuary but a command center. The storm had passed, leaving the air sharp and heavy with the scent of wet earth. Garrick Ellington had barely slept. He stood over the dining table, now covered in files, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled, looking less like a billionaire and more like a man cornered by his own ghosts. Emilia Cortez entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You should rest, she said. You look like you have not closed your eyes in days. He shook his head. Latham moves fast. Every hour we lose, another piece of evidence vanishes. She placed the mug beside him. Then we move faster. Howard Reeves, the private investigator, arrived shortly after dawn with a grim expression and a folder thick with documents. Your instincts were right, he said, spreading out photographs of financial statements. Latham used offshore accounts to buy silence. Lawyers, auditors, even your board members. But that is not the worst part. He slid a second photo across the table, a security still of Emilia entering the Ellington Foundation 3 weeks before her supposed marriage. Garrick's brows furrowed. That is impossible, he said. She was not part of the foundation then. Reeves nodded slowly. Exactly. Someone used her identity to approve a fraudulent donation. It is what tied her to the laundering scheme. Emilia stared at the image, cold dread running through her. They framed me, she whispered, before I even knew you existed. Garrick clenched his fists. They will pay for this. The day blurred into a rush of phone calls, encrypted messages, and hidden drives. Garrick's contacts within the Justice Department agreed to meet him that evening, but it came with a warning there was a leak inside his company. Someone close was feeding information to Latham. That realization left the house feeling smaller, the shadows longer. By afternoon, Emilia found Garrick standing in his office, staring at a portrait of his late mother. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. She used to say integrity is not what you say in front of people, it is what you do when no one is watching. He turned toward Emilia, his expression raw. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. She stepped closer, her voice gentle but steady. Then remember it now. You have the power to fix this, but not if you keep carrying it alone. That evening, they drove to the company headquarters. The city lights shimmered against the glass towers, but inside Garrick's car, silence pressed heavy between them. He parked in the underground level and looked at her. Stay close, he said quietly. I do not trust anyone anymore. As they entered the building, the halls were eerily empty. The meeting room upstairs was dark except for the glow of a laptop on the long conference table. Reeves? Garrick called out. No answer. He moved closer, and the laptop screen came to life, a live feed from the Foundation's security cameras. The footage showed a figure breaking into the charity's main office. Emilia gasped. The face was unmistakable. That is Latham, she whispered. Garrick's jaw tightened. He is not even hiding anymore. Yendal. Before he could react, the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor. 2 security guards appeared, flanking Reeves, his face pale. "We have a problem," he said. Latham tipped off the authorities. "They think you are destroying evidence. They are coming here with a warrant." Garrick exhaled sharply, his mind racing. "We need to move now," he said. "We take the files, the proof, and get them to the FBI directly." Reeves hesitated. "You will be arrested if they catch you outside." Garrick looked at Emilia. "Then we do this together." They raced through the back corridors, the sound of sirens growing louder in the distance. In the elevator, Emilia's hand brushed his, trembling. "If this goes wrong," she said, "promise me you will protect my sister." He met her eyes, fierce and unwavering. "If this goes wrong, we protect each other." The doors opened to the underground garage, where Reeves's car waited. Rain began again, tapping against the windshield as they sped through the city streets. Garrick's phone buzzed, a single message lighting up the screen. "You should have stayed silent." Emilia's breath caught. "He is watching us." Garrick pressed harder on the accelerator. "Let him watch," he said, through clenched teeth. "Because when this ends, the world will finally see who the real criminal is." The tires hissed over the wet asphalt as they disappeared into the storm, chasing the truth that could either destroy them or set them free. The rain followed them all the way to the city's edge, falling harder as the night deepened. Garrick Ellington's grip on the steering wheel was white-knuckled as the wipers fought against the downpour. Beside him, Emilia Cortez clutched the folder of evidence pages damp, the ink smudged from her trembling hands. The car's headlights cut through sheets of water as they sped toward the federal building downtown. Every turn felt like a risk, every shadow like a trap. Garrick's voice broke the silence. "Once we hand this over, there is no going back. Latham will lose everything, but so will I." Emilia turned to him, her expression firm despite her fear. "Then let him lose first. You can rebuild, Garrick. You have already lost too much pretending to be heartless." "Joe." They pulled into a side street behind the federal office, where Reeves was waiting under a flickering streetlight, his coat soaked through. "You got it?" he asked, glancing around nervously. Garrick handed him the drive. Everything. Offshore accounts, fake signatures, and proof Latham used the foundation's name to cover money transfers. Reeves nodded grimly. "Good. My contact is inside, but we need to move fast." Someone tipped them off about this meeting. Before Garrick could reply, a black SUV screeched to a stop at the end of the alley. The doors flew open, and men in dark suits stepped out, guns drawn. "Federal agents!" one shouted. "Hands where I can see them." Garrick froze. Emilia's heart pounded. "Garrick, what is happening?" she whispered. Reeves swore under his breath. "They think you are the criminals." "Latham beat us here." The agents surrounded them, flashlights cutting through the rain. Garrick raised his hands slowly. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady. "You are being manipulated. The real suspect." "Save it," the agent barked. "We have a warrant for your arrest, Mr. Ellington, and for Mrs. Emilia Ellington as an accessory to financial fraud." The words struck like thunder. Emilia's knees almost buckled, but Garrick stepped in front of her. "She is innocent," he said sharply. "Take me, but let her go." The agent shook his head. "You are both coming in." "Oh." Suddenly, headlights flared from behind the SUV, blinding everyone. Another car had appeared, a sleek black sedan. The window rolled down, and a familiar voice echoed through the rain. "Step away from them." It was Dr. Latham. His smile was cold, triumphant. "You should have left well enough alone, Garrick. Now you get to watch everything you built crumble, along with your pretty wife's reputation." Garrick's fury was quiet but deadly. "You set us up," he said. Latham laughed softly. "Set you up? You handed me everything I needed. Every file, every password. You did all the work for me." Before he could finish, Reeves moved fast, pulling a hidden recorder from his pocket and pressing play. Latham's own voice filled the alley, recorded from their last call. "We bury the evidence and let the nurse take the fall. By the time Ellington figures it out, it will be too late." The agents froze, their guns lowering slightly as realization spread across their faces. Latham's smirk vanished. How did you should have checked your phone lines," Reeves said. "Old habits die hard." Chaos erupted. Latham turned to run, but two agents tackled him to the ground. Garrick stepped forward, shielding Emilia as flashlights swung wildly in the storm. One agent looked up at him. "Mr. Ellington, I think we owe you an apology." Garrick did not answer. He was too busy holding Emilia close, feeling the weight of weeks of fear and anger break loose in a single breath. She looked up at him, her voice shaking. "It is over?" He nodded slowly. "Almost." An hour later, inside the federal office, Latham sat in handcuffs while agents reviewed the files. Garrick gave his statement, calm and composed, but his eyes never left Emilia. When it was finally done, an officer approached them. "You are both free to go. The charges are dropped. And Mr. Ellington, good work exposing this." Garrick only nodded. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement. Emilia stood by the car, exhaustion written across her face. Garrick joined her, silent for a moment before speaking. "You should not have been dragged into this. I can never take back what I did, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." She studied him for a long moment, then said softly, "Then start by being honest with me and with yourself." He nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "No more lies." For the first time, when he reached for her hand, she did not pull away. The storm was gone, the truth finally out, and somewhere between guilt and redemption, a new beginning was quietly taking shape. Weeks passed after the night that changed everything. The storm that had once consumed Garrick Ellington's life finally broke, leaving calm skies and a man learning how to breathe again. Latham was sentenced, the scandal exposed, and the Ellington Foundation cleared of all wrongdoing. But for Garrick, victory felt quiet, almost fragile, as if any loud sound could shatter it. The mansion no longer felt like a fortress. Sunlight filtered through open windows where heavy drapes once hung. Emilia Cortez walked through the halls one morning, her steps light, her heart uncertain. She had not decided whether she would stay. The marriage that began in deceit had become something else entirely, something she could not yet name. Garrick found her in the garden, where roses bloomed again after months of neglect. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching her. "You never told me you liked roses," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "I never thought I would live somewhere long enough to grow them." He took a slow breath, as if gathering courage. "I meant what I said that night. I want to make things right. Not just with the foundation, with you." Emilia turned to face him. "And how do you plan to do that?" Garrick hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. It was the original marriage contract. "This," he said quietly, "is the mistake I made trying to control everything. I destroyed it. You owe me nothing. You are free to go." He tore the paper in half, the sound sharp in the morning air. Emilia stared at him, speechless. "You are letting me go?" He nodded. "Because love that is forced is not love at all." She felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from the strange ache of relief and loss intertwined. "You could have said that months ago," she whispered. "I did not know how," he admitted. "But I am learning." He turned to leave, giving her space to choose her own path. Yet as he walked away, the quiet between them grew unbearable. "Garrick," she called after him. He stopped, slowly turning back. She crossed the distance between them and looked up at him, her voice trembling but sure. "You were wrong about one thing. Love is not something you control. It is something you build." And somewhere between the lies and the storm, we started building it. His breath caught as her hand found his. "Emilia," he said softly, "I do not deserve." "You do not have to deserve it," she interrupted. "You just have to protect it." The words hung between them, fragile and alive. Garrick exhaled, his shoulders finally releasing the weight he had carried for too long. "Then let me try again," he said. "No contracts, no lies. Just us." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, not the one from their first wedding, but new, simple, unplanned. "Marry me," he said quietly, "for real this time." Emilia laughed through her tears. "You really are terrible at giving people time to think." "Then do not think," he whispered. "Just say yes." She looked into his eyes, the same eyes that once terrified her, and saw something entirely different now. Peace, redemption, love. "Yes," she said at last. The word came out as a breath, but it carried all the strength in the world. Months later, the foundation hosted its annual gala again, but this time it was not about wealth or reputation. It was about rebuilding. Garrick spoke on stage about integrity, kindness, and second chances, while Emilia stood among the crowd, no longer hidden behind the title of Mrs. Ellington but standing beside him as his equal. When the speech ended, Garrick joined her, wrapping an arm gently around her waist. "I never thanked you," he said. "For what?" she asked. "For saving me," he replied. "Not my company. Me." She smiled, resting her head against his shoulder as the applause filled the room. The camera lights flashed, but this time nothing was staged. No contracts, no deception, just two people who had survived the wreckage of their own mistakes and built something real from the ruins. And as the music swelled and the lights dimmed, Emilia whispered to herself, almost in disbelief, "Sometimes the wrong beginning is what leads you to the right forever."